smoothie ended up perfect. However, make sure to dose the quantity according to the potency of your drops. If in doubt, add only 4 drops, blend, taste the mixture, and add more if needed. Remember, you can always add more later on, but you can't take them away. Well, of course, unless you have superpowers, because it is a well-known fact. Superheroes love tropical smoothies. Anyway, regardless of how many drops you added, this is how the final tropical smoothie should look. Smooth and creamy. Oh yes, and heavenly. The aroma of this drink really is something extraordinary, and we are looking forward to hearing your opinion about it once you've tried this particular combination. Hey guys, and welcome to the Vegan Corner. If you were looking for a good way to eat your gluten-free carbs of the day, you've just found it. That's right, today's recipe is about a delightful quinoa salad which really tastes out of this world. As usual, the use of fat is reduced to a minimum in all our recipes, making any of our preparations virtually fat-free. To begin with, finely chop the garlic and the onions according to your preference. For the garlic, the finer the better. However, with the onions, the larger slices have the bigger taste. Next, it is time to prepare the bell pepper or capsicum. Our preferred method involves first removing the stalk and then placing the pepper stalk side down, which will make it impossible for it to roll around the chopping board. We then start cutting it from the top and slice it all the way down until you hit the board. After that, simply turn the pepper and repeat the process to obtain several flat slices which are easy to dice. If you are wondering if this technique is one that we have borrowed from other chefs, the answer is yes. Many great chefs chop peppers this way. Now, slice the carrots in half lengthwise and then slice again each half into 3. Dice the carrots to the desired size. The last ingredient to prepare is the zucchini or courgette. Simply slice it into 3 slabs lengthwise, then cut each slab into 3 sticks and dice them. We can now move to the cooking part of this tasty recipe. Place a pan over a high heat and add a few drops of oil to it. You can avoid the use of oil altogether, but we find it helps the garlic and the onions to caramelize a bit, making the final dish somewhat tastier. Before starting the cooking process, make sure to have a glass of water on standby, as you'll soon need it. Now, add the garlic and the onions to the pan. Cook until soft and translucent, making sure to stir regularly to prevent them from burning and catching to the pan. Once done, add the carrots to the pan first, as they are denser than the other ingredients, so they must cook for longer. Cook the carrots for a couple of minutes, stirring regularly, and then add some water to the pan so that the ingredients will cook more evenly. Once the water has almost completely evaporated, add the bell pepper. Give the ingredients a good stir and add some more water. We decided to add some black pepper here, and you can too, should you wish. The last ingredient to add is the zucchini, which need very little time to cook and are also quite nice when still slightly crunchy. There is no need to add water during this step, as the heat of the other ingredients is more than enough to cook this vegetable. Cook for about 5 or 6 minutes before turning off the heat. The salad is meant to be eaten cold or at room temperature, so we recommend to let the vegetable cool completely before adding them to the cooked quinoa. Once the vegetables are at the right temperature, transfer the quinoa into a bowl large enough to accommodate all the ingredients and add the cooked vegetables to it. If you want to know how to cook quinoa to perfection, have a look at our recipe. You can find the link in the description down below. Give the ingredients a good stir to properly combine them. We also decided to add some zingy notes to our salad by grating in some lemon zest and some freshly squeezed lemon juice. This really was a great addition and we recommend trying it. The last ingredient we added was some torn basil leaf. Once all the ingredients have been added, stir one last time to complete the salad. As you can see, we really like colorful dishes, as we believe there is a reason that natures provide the most nutritious food in simply amazing varieties of color. Sure, Color is not everything, but it is certainly one of the elements that makes food appealing. Today's recipe is for a refreshing and nourishing pasta salad. During the summer, we regularly ponder about whether or not hot dishes are appropriate, and are always wondering what we can prepare to stay cool, yet enjoy our meals as much as possible. This recipe is one of our favorites for such occasions, as it's easy to prepare and can be enjoyed in nearly every situation. The first thing to do to prepare this dish is to cut the cherry tomatoes in half. Then, scoop out the seeds and the internal membranes. We recommend not skipping this step, or the condiment could end up excessively watery, and it won't stick to the pasta as we want it to. However, be sure to keep hold of the removed parts, as they might be needed later on, who knows. Make sure to keep a bowl out to place all the chopped ingredients in. Now, cut the tomato halves into smaller pieces. Next on our list are the olives. Simply cut them into quarters and move on to the next ingredient, which is basil. Pile the leaves on top of each other and slice them finely, or chop them if you prefer. Next, finely slice the garlic and then press it with the flat of the knife, pulling it towards you. Repeat the motion, crushing a little garlic at a time. This technique unleashes the flavor of the garlic, which allows us all to be more efficient with our ingredients. Once that's done, we'll need to prepare the pasta condiment by adding some vinegar, black pepper, salt and oregano to the bowl. Now give the ingredients a good stir to complete the condiment. If the mixture is looking a little dry, you can now add some of the reserved tomato seeds and juice. Now transfer the pasta into a bowl, add the condiment to it and mix well to combine and complete the dish. And there you have it, another dish to add to your repertoire under the category quick and yummy. How many is that now? We are losing count. We think this pasta looks rather appetizing and hope you enjoy eating it as much as we did making it. We love potatoes. They taste great, they digest extremely well for most people, and they are also one of the most versatile ingredients available in a proper plant-based pantry, especially if you enjoy creating stunning and flavorsome recipes. Now, if that's not impressive enough for you, I do know how to turn the humble spud into something worth dying for, which is a delectable potato salad. Let's begin with the least demanding task of the recipe. Dice the potatoes and cook them until they are, well, cooked. Then, drain the potatoes and set them aside to cool. At this point we are ready to move on to the more demanding part of the recipe. So place the tofu, the water, the mustard, the Tabasco and the salt into a food processor and blitz them until they turn into a lusciously creamy and velvety sauce. Now get ready because the last task is going to be exhausting. Place the cooked potatoes into a bowl large enough to accommodate all the ingredients, add in the sauce, the spring onions and the parsley, and stir to properly combine. Wow, that was one difficult assignment. Once that's done, the only thing you can do to improve the quality of this dish is to taste it and adjust the salt if necessary. The combination of tofu, mustard and parsley creates an interesting and balanced eggy flavor, which I'm sure you'll find to be quite beautiful. This is of course if you ever enjoyed eggy flavors. And here you have the final salad, waiting for me to dig in and for you to prepare it. This dish would generally be considered a side, but I much prefer to prepare a gigantic portion of salad and enjoy it by myself as a main course. This video is about a simple and delicious Mediterranean dish, widely known as Israeli salad. This mix of raw ingredients creates an incredible salad that even without any condiment will taste absolutely phenomenal. To begin with, cut the cucumber in half lengthwise and then divide each half into 3 long strips. Dice the strips and move on to the next ingredient, which is tomato. Now, depending on the tomato variety you have, you might need to adjust the chopping technique. Regardless, dice the tomato into small pieces of roughly the same size of the cucumber ones. Dice the onions and the pepper and the vegetables are all ready for the salad. One fundamental addition to this salad is parsley. Roll it to make it easier to cut and chop it finely. Now, we have used parsley in pretty much any dish in our lives, but we have never thought that it could complement a dish so much. Place all the chopped vegetables into a bowl and stir well to combine. Add the parsley and mix to incorporate it. We still have 2 ingredients to add here, one of which is lemon. We like to squeeze lemon directly onto our hand, so that the juice can drip down, whilst the seeds remain trapped. Now stir again, and if you desire, add some freshly grated black pepper to complete this colorful dish. Oh my, that is what I call salad. With this dish, you also get to eat your veggies for the day without even thinking about it, as your mind will be far more focused on the beautiful taste. Have you ever heard of Olivier salad, also known as Russian salad? This is one of those dishes which you really don't want to eat in its traditional form, as it regularly contains eggs, chicken and a lot of mayonnaise. And by a lot, I really mean it. However, once again, we soon discovered that making a fat-free version of this dish is that easy. And guess what? It tastes a lot better than the traditional one, which seems to be a recurring theme with recipes we veganize or veganate. Or maybe we should just stick with words that exist, such as make vegan. Now be prepared, because this one is very easy. We are not going to show you the cooking process today, as there is no need for it. Simply boil the vegetables until they are cooked, and that's about it. The carrots should be diced into pea-sized pieces and the potatoes into cubes of roughly 1 cm or half an inch. To begin with this recipe, dice the pickled cucumbers and the onions into small pieces. A good rule for this kind of salads is to cut all the ingredients of roughly the same size, so that you will get nice even bites when you are enjoying the dish. Take a large bowl and tip in the yogurt, the vegan mayo and the pickling vinegar before giving the ingredients a good stir. Now add some black pepper, a pinch of smoked paprika, salt to taste if desired, and stir again. Now add all the vegetables apart from the potatoes into the bowl and stir again to combine. The final ingredient to add are the potatoes. Stir them in, but make sure not to overmix the ingredients, or the potatoes will start to break apart and will overly thicken the sauce, which is not something we are necessarily looking for. Make sure that the ingredients are properly cooled down before you mix them, or they will cook the sauce, yielding an all but pleasant final result. Now cover the bowl with some cling film and store it in the fridge for at least 1 hour before serving, best if overnight. This will allow for the flavors to properly blend and will make the final potato salad even more delicious. We also recommend taking the salad out of the fridge at least half an hour before serving it, as it is best enjoyed at room temperature. And here you have the final Russian salad. Look at how appetizing and creamy this dish is, and without all the unhealthy ingredients, I can finally eat as much as I want of it, knowing that it's going to do me only good. And I sincerely hope you like this dish too. We strongly recommend you to try this preparation, as it really is a special one. Today's recipe is our twist on a popular Italian summer dish called panzanella. This salad-like preparation delivers bold, savory flavors without compromise. That's not mentioning that it's healthy, whole and gluten-free. What more could you ask from low-fat vegan cuisine? We really are pushing super healthy cooking to the limit. First of all, you want to cook the quinoa and cool it down to room temperature. To do this, you can watch our video on how to cook quinoa, linked in the description below and in the cards, or you can simply cook it according to the instruction on the packet. Now let's do some heavy chopping. You don't really need any ninja skill here, but if you can, try to chop all the ingredients into pea-sized pieces, just to increase the chance of biting into every single ingredient every time you take a spoonful. The next step is to remove all the water and the seeds from the tomatoes. Reason being is that if you don't, the quinoa will soak up all the liquid and your beautiful panzanella will end up the same consistency of baby food. And that is something we definitely want to avoid. The basil should be chopped roughly or torn into pieces. The capers can be kept whole, cut in half or chopped, as it really depends on how big they are. Once the chopping is complete, we are ready to rock and roll. Place all the chopped ingredients into a large bowl and stir them to properly combine them. Next, simply add in the quinoa and stir it in to complete the dish. Salt is not really needed in this recipe, as the capers do a pretty good job at adding saltiness to it. However, seeing as every brand makes different capers, make sure to taste the salad before serving it and to adjust the salt if needed. If you are not a massive fan of capers, you can easily substitute them with olives. However, be warned that panzanella without capers doesn't taste like panzanella. Now cover the bowl with some cling film and place it in the fridge for a couple of hours before consuming it. This will allow for the flavors to properly blend. And here is the final panzanella. If you find the name too difficult to pronounce or remember, just call it Italian summery quinoa salad, and I promise I won't be offended and it won't have any impact on the final flavor. Here is our recipe for a delicious and summery rice salad, or insalata di riso, as we call it in Italy. This dish is incredibly savory, yet very refreshing at the same time, and it is perfectly suited for one of those scorching days we tend to endure during the hot season. Not that I know much about those days, living in Scotland, but if you live somewhere so hot that you eat chilies to cool your mouth off, then I trust you'll know exactly what to do with this dish. The first thing to do is to cook the rice, drain it and cool it at room temperature. You can use any rice you want for this dish, but we find that Venus rice works best as it gives a very nice color contrast to the final salad. Next, let's chop a few ingredients. Were you expecting a nice chopping-free recipe? Too bad. We are making a salad, and we want to be able to fit as many lovely ingredients in there as possible. Anyway, as per usual, we find it is best to chop all the ingredients into pea-sized pieces, so that you'll get a bite of everything with every spoonful. However, you are free to chop the ingredients as big as you desire, knowing full well that the bigger they are, the crunchier the final salad will be. Just don't chuck them in whole, okay? Next step, cook the peas. You can either use frozen or fresh peas for this dish, as it makes very little difference. Cook the peas in boiling water for roughly 3 minutes, which should be enough to soften them just lightly and keep a little bit of crunch. Now it is time to put together the final salad, so place the cooked rice into a large bowl, add in the chopped ingredients and stir well to properly combine all the elements into one amazing refreshing rice salad. Honestly, this dish is so easy you could make it even if you just got back from the pub. Once that's done, make sure to taste the salad and adjust salt if necessary. Remember to leave the final salad in the fridge for a couple of hours before enjoying it, to allow for the flavors to properly blend. And this is the final rice salad, a healthy, wholesome dish for you to enjoy straight out of the fridge. Well, it's enjoyable at room temperature too, but if it's so warm that hot water now comes out of both taps, I think it is best for you to enjoy a salad a bit cooler than usual. I've been waiting for a very long time to share this recipe, as I really want it to be a special one. My #1 favorite salad dressing. We all know the importance of having leafy greens in our diet, but when that means eating a handful of leaves, dressed with a load of oil-based dressing, it's not overly desirable, is it? Well, what we are about to share is the result of years of eating large amounts of salad every single day, trying to create the perfect dressing with the lowest amount of fat. To begin with, let's chop a few things. Start with the tomatoes, which should be cut whichever way you prefer. It's your salad after all. For the olives, I like to cut them into small pieces, so to increase the chances of biting into them with each and every bite. Next, chop the onion. I suggest you don't chop it finely, or you risk not tasting it in the salad. The capers tend to be quite sour and salty, and if you want to remove some of the saltiness, soak them in water for 15 minutes before chopping them. For this salad, I recommend using basil, as it is a herb that goes beautifully with the rest of the ingredients. The basil can be either torn into pieces or sliced. And last but not least, the salad. Once again, it all depends upon personal taste. We are using little gem and iceberg lettuce, so cutting them into strips seems to be just right. Whatever salad you are going to use, make sure to cut it according to your preference, as that is all that matters. For the raw version of this dressing, you will find the variations in the description box. And now, it is time to compose the final salad. Start by placing the avocado, the lemon juice, the vinegar and a pinch of salt into a bowl. Mash the avocado using a fork and mix it with the other ingredients. Once again, I can't stress enough how important it is for the avocado to be perfectly ripe. In fact, the better the avocado is, the less you need for the dressing. You can find my favorite avocado varieties listed in the description box. Next, add in the tomatoes, the corn, the onions, the capers, the chopped olives and the basil, and stir well to combine all the flavors together and complete the dressing. The last step is to add the salad into the bowl and mix everything together. This step will require you to move the ingredients around for a couple of minutes, not only to properly coat every single leaf with some of that amazing dressing, but also to make sure that the very same dressing is not sitting at the bottom of the bowl, laughing at you. Yes, avocado dressings can be quite mean. And there you are, mixing a salad that would easily serve 5 normal people with the dressing that has the quantity of fat present in a teaspoon of olive oil. Now how cool is that? What? You don't believe that that amount of dressing is enough for such a huge quantity of salad? Well, the recipe is right there in front of you. You simply have to give it a try and prove me wrong. My guess? You'll love it. The fact that this recipe has avocado in doesn't necessarily make the final salad a high-fat dish. In fact, it is very unlikely that the small quantity of avocado present in this dressing is going to increase your fat intake of the day by much. What will certainly increase, however, is your leafy greens intake, as I'm sure that you love this dressing so much that you will start looking at salads from a completely different perspective. As you probably already know, one of the most challenging things in the kitchen is to make raw savory dishes which are healthy, as well as being low in fat and salt. Today's recipe, which by the way is one of my favorite ones, is for a dish with a beautiful taste, fennel salad. In case you're thinking, that doesn't seem like a special recipe, then I have one thing to say to you: think again. This simple dish is a phenomenal treat, and we are about to show you how to make it. To begin with this easy Italian-inspired dish, start by placing the raisins into a small bowl and covering them with water to rehydrate them. Next, clean the fennel and shave it as finely as possible with a mandolin. You could do this with a knife, of course, but to make it that fine, you should have some crazy knife skills, and if you really are that good in the kitchen, please be my guest and proceed by using your favorite knife. Now chop some fresh chili, which is not necessarily needed to add heat to the dish, but because it really is a great tasting addition to this salad. Next up is the dill. Simply chop it roughly. Now to the technical part of this recipe, which is the one where we segment the orange. Let's start by slicing off the top and the bottom of the orange. This gives a stable cutting surface and will prevent the orange from escaping. Then, using downward strokes, slice the skin off the fruit and discard it. Now simply slip the knife between a segment and the connective membrane of the orange, cutting until you reach the center to separate the segment from the fruit. As you can see, the pulp of the orange easily separates from the rest of the fruit. Make sure to keep your fingers out of the way of the knife, as we really have no use for bloody oranges in this recipe. Now let's compose the final salad. Take a large bowl, tip in all the ingredients and remember to drain the raisins before adding them to the bowl. Next, let's add some salt and pepper if desired. Now give the ingredients a good mix to complete the dish. Salads like this are better if left to marinate in the fridge for 1 hour before serving them. You should also know that both the vegetables and the fruit will release some of their natural juices, which will obviously end up on the bottom of the bowl. For this reason, before serving, make sure to mix well the ingredients once again and to collect the portion of the salad from the top. And here you have the final salad, a light and refreshing dish with a very distinctive flavor, as well as savory and sweet notes, both of which are very tasty. And looking at it, doesn't it just make you hungry? Well, don't eat your computer screen. Get up, walk over the kitchen and get preparing. That's what I do every time I see it. Like salad and tomatoes? If you do, then you already know that these two ingredients are even better when enjoyed together. Being chefs for many years taught us that the less you touch ingredients, the better they are, as they speak for themselves without needing any complicated preparations. Today's recipe follows that philosophy, a tasty tomato salad with a few extra ingredients which will make it taste absolutely amazing. To begin with, remove the stem end from the onion, peel it and finely slice it. Make sure to separate the layers before moving on, so that the onion will lose some of its potency whilst we are preparing the other ingredients. Slice the pickled cucumber as finely as desired. As you already know, this ingredient it is pretty tasty and sour, so fine slices should work just fine. Then move on to finely slicing the olives. The next ingredient on our list is cucumber. Let's cut it into half, or not, and cut into slices. Now to the tomatoes. If possible, make sure to use a different variety of tomatoes to increase the taste and color range of the salad. Slice the tomatoes to the desired thickness. The tomatoes we like the most for our salads are cumatos, which are the black and dense ones. But what about you? What's your favorite tomato variety? Let us know, as we are always interested about other people's choices in the kitchen. The last thing you want to cut just before composing and eating the dish is the salad. This is as salads oxidize very fast when cut, and you lose some of the nutrients along the process. Slice the leafy greens in strips and arrange them nicely onto a plate, so that we can start building the final salad. Now, add the tomato slices on top of the leaves, followed by the onion rings, which should now be sweeter and somewhat less pungent. Then, add the fresh cucumber slices, followed by the pickled ones. The last two ingredients to add are the sliced olives and the sweet corn, which can be used raw or cooked, depending upon taste. Is there any dressing for this salad? You might decide to add some salt or some tamari soy sauce to it, but to be honest, there is really no need for anything extra, as some of the ingredients carry salt on their own and all are packed full of taste. There you have it, a salad that tastes as good as it looks. This dish is extremely easy to digest and is also virtually fat-free due to the fact that most of the ingredients are in their unadulterated natural state. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Corner. Here you have our recipe for a renowned Japanese preparation, miso soup. This dish, as we mentioned in our recipe for dashi stock, is all but vegan, as one of its ingredients is fish. We know how people love this soup, so we decided to turn it into a fat-free vegan delicacy. We also wanted to point out that making miso soup better than any standard Japanese restaurant is dead easy, as they usually prepare it by mixing a small bag of instant dashi stock with water, which is quite far from being healthy. To begin with, let's rehydrate the seaweed. Place it into a small bowl and cover it with cold water. Within 10 minutes, the few small pieces of dehydrated wakame will transform into big leaves. Drain the seaweed and remove the edible part from the central veins, which are quite hard and not very pleasant to eat. Chop the seaweed into smaller pieces. Now take a spring onion and slice it into small round pieces. Next ingredient to add is the tofu. You can use as much as you want of it, as it is mainly needed for presentation's purposes. However, we like to add very little tofu to our soup and to cut it into tiny small dices. What can I say? We are perfectionists. Now to the main ingredient of the dish, the actual soup. Heat the dashi stock until it starts steaming and you see small bubbles forming on the bottom of the pan. Now turn off the heat and stir in the miso. How much miso, you might ask? Well, add it a little at a time until the soup has the level of savouriness that matches with your personal taste. Now, miso is very difficult to dissolve in water, and it also often contains some bigger pieces, which are not desirable into the final soup. To solve this problem, we are using a miso strainer for this task, called miso koshi in Japan. if you do not have this piece of equipment, you can simply use a small fine mesh sieve or a tea strainer. But if you do not have a Japanese miso strainer, then what are you playing at? Everyone has a miso koshi at home, right? The variety of different miso available seems infinite. However, the most popular ones are red miso and white miso. Red miso being the world's most utilized to prepare miso soup. Now let's put the pieces together to create the final soup. For the sake of demonstration, we are making a single portion here by using a small ceramic Japanese bowl, as it is cute and appropriate. However, if you have a larger appetite, don't be shy and use a salad bowl instead. The first thing to go in are the onions, followed by the seaweed. Now add the tofu and simply pour in the soup to complete the dish. Here is the final miso soup, full of flavor and packed with umami. In case you have a savory tooth, this dish will surely satisfy it, as it is considered one of the most delicious food ever invented. The phenomenal taste makes it the perfect starter for any meal. Today's recipe is about a famous stock, Japanese dashi. This preparation is probably more famous when used in conjunction with other ingredients to create miso soup, but that's another recipe which unfortunately isn't getting covered today. If you don't already know this, regular dashi is not a vegan preparation, and in fact, is not even vegetarian, as one of its ingredients is katsuobushi, otherwise known as skipjack tuna. As we are sure you know by now, we love animals, and we are not going to use any for our preparations. Well, actually we will use some animals today, but you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Despite the absence of the tuna, this dashi will still taste out of this world, and we are sure you love it. To begin with, pour the water into a bowl and dip in the dehydrated mushrooms. You have two options here. You can either place the bowl in the fridge and leave the mushrooms to soak overnight, or gently warm up the water slightly above body temperature and soak the mushrooms at room temperature for 2 to 4 hours. Once the time has elapsed, you can remove the mushrooms from the water. You can use the rehydrated shiitake mushrooms for any recipe you desire, and they will add some interesting woody and savory notes to almost any dish. Strain the liquid through a fine sieve lined with a piece of wet kitchen paper, ensuring you use paper with a cute animal design on it. And you have obtained shiitake dashi. Now, of course, the recipe doesn't end here, as shojin dashi is made by mixing two different stocks, so we are still missing one, kombu stock. To prepare the second stock, place the water into a saucepan and warm it up until it starts steaming and you see small air bubbles appearing on the sides and the bottom of the pan. If you want to be fancy, use a thermometer and bring the water to 80 degrees Celsius, which is about 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the water is at the right temperature, tip in the kombu, cover with the lid and let it to infuse for 1 hour before moving on. Once the time has elapsed, remove the kombu from the water. Make sure to use chopsticks for this task, just to make the whole recipe a little more Asian. You can now strain the second stock by using the same method as the first. But once again remember that using kitchen paper with cute animals on it is essential, as this will have a major positive effect on the taste of the final dish. This time you might need to wring the paper at the end of the straining, as kombu releases some gelling agent which clogs the paper pores and makes the task of straining slightly more difficult. Now both the stocks could be used as they are. The kombu one has the taste of the sea, and the shiitake has a deep and rich earthy taste. However, it is by combining the two of them that you will achieve a proper shojin dashi, and regardless of the recipe you are going to prepare with this stock, it will end up stunning, guaranteed. Simply mix 2 parts of kombu stock with 1 part of shiitake stock, and you will find yourself with an amazing vegan dashi. This stock doesn't carry much flavor on its own, but it's packed with umami. Umami is the taste that adds savoriness to a dish, and it is well desirable in recipes such as soups and curries. Here you have our first recipe for a delicious fat-free vegan stew, which in this case is a mushroom and potato one. This is by far the best stew we have ever had the pleasure to try, and hopefully you will enjoy the preparation and give it a try yourself to confirm that this one really is an extraordinary dish. To begin with, let's start by chopping some vegetables. First, the garlic into thin slices unless you have other preferred shapes. Then, slice some ginger and chop it as finely as possible. Next up are the tomatoes, which should be cut into small pieces. We are using cherry tomatoes here, and cutting them into 12 parts seems to be just right for the task. If using larger tomatoes, make sure to adjust the size. For the mushrooms, simply dice them into big chunks. Make sure not to cut them too small, as they have a high water content and they will end up very small once cooked, and you surely don't want to lose their amazing crunchy texture. Now simply peel and dice the potatoes. A good size is roughly half an inch, or a little more of a centimeter if you live on our side of the pond. For this recipe, make sure to use waxy salad potatoes, as if you use the ones for baking, the floury ones, there is a chance that they will completely break apart during the first 15 minutes of the cooking process, and you'll end up with a soup, which is not necessarily what we want to see at the end of the recipe. And finally, let's start cooking this terrific stew. Take your favorite pot, add in some of your favorite local organic fat-free oil, which is once again water, and turn on the heat to medium. Dip in the ginger, the garlic and the mustard seeds and stir well to combine. Bring the liquid to a boil and cook the ingredients until they are soft and translucent. Now add the chopped tomatoes and cook them until they soften a bit, roughly 4 or 5 minutes. Now add the mushrooms, the paprika, some pepper and stir to combine the ingredients. Cook for another 5 minutes, making sure to keep an eye on the pot and to stir frequently, as we really don't want the ingredients to start catching to the pan. Once the time has elapsed, add the potatoes and stir. Now add the tomato sauce, the water or stock if you prefer, and stir again to properly combine all the ingredients together. Now bring the liquid to a boil, cover the pot with a lid and lower the heat to the minimum so that the mixture simmers just lightly. Cook the ingredients for 15 minutes over the lowest heat, and in this case, there is really no need for your eyes to remain glued to the pot, so you can sit back and relax, knowing full well that a magical stew is cooking. Once the time has elapsed, throw in the peas and increase the heat to medium. Cook the stew for another 10 minutes so that the potatoes have the time to properly cook and the liquid to reduce, hence thickening the stew. If you prefer your stew to be thick, you have two options. The first is to cook it for another 5 minutes to reduce it even more. The other is to willingly crush a few of the potatoes with a fork, releasing some of their starch and naturally thickening the sauce. Taste-wise, it makes no difference, your choice. And this is the final piping hot stew, ready to be enjoyed during one of those cold days. As we head towards winter, I'm sure you know the feeling pretty well. Unless of course you are one of those people who live in a place where the sun shines all year long. And if that is the case, I think I hate you. The woody notes of the mushrooms perfectly blend with the flavor of the potatoes, and with the added kick of umami from the peas, seriously, you are in for a real treat. The recipe we are going to have a go at today is for a creamy, luscious and incredibly smooth pumpkin soup. Soups in general tend to be labeled as healthy food, but what people don't know is that they are regularly loaded with cream, butter and oil, as it is very easy to hide these unhealthy ingredients in a liquid preparation. Well, we are taking a stand. We will definitely not be throwing any of these ingredients into our recipe today. So let's see together how to prepare a truly healthy soup, which still tastes out of this world. The first thing to do is to peel, clean and slice the pumpkin. Any kind of squash will work with this recipe, but make sure it is ripe to perfection if you want to obtain an outstanding soup. Our favorite squash is definitely green kabocha with its chestnutty flavor and dense texture. And what's yours? Next ingredient on our list is the onion, which must be finely sliced to allow for faster cooking. We are now ready to begin with the cooking process. Place a pan over high heat, pour in some fat-free oil, which is water, and add the onions. Sweat the onions until they are soft and translucent, adding a little more water anytime that is required. This should take just a few minutes. When the onions are ready, dip in the sliced pumpkin and stir the ingredients. Add the stock to the pan and stir again. The liquid should be enough to cover the ingredients just lightly. Bring the stock to a simmer before covering the pan with the lid and turning the heat down to low. The ingredients should now cook for 20 minutes and the stock should simmer during the entire time. Once the time is up, turn off the heat. Now we have to add the most important ingredient, which is rosemary. Some ingredients are really meant to be combined together to create something extraordinary. And here you have a great example. Rosemary and pumpkin complement each other to a degree that we never thought it would be possible. Basically, they are like soulmates. Add the rosemary to the pan, submerge it into the liquid and cover again with the lid. Leave the herb to infuse into the stock for 20 minutes. During this time, all the flavor of the rosemary will spread into the liquid, giving an extra woody note to the final soup. When the time is up, remove the rosemary and get ready to blend the ingredients. Place the cooked ingredients into the blender's jug and blend at high speed for 30-40 seconds to create the most delicious and aromatic pumpkin soup. If you want to turn the soup into a masterpiece, we still have a few additions to make. Transfer the soup into a bowl, then add a pinch of cayenne pepper, some vinegar and a pinch of salt. Stir one last time. And there you have it. We find it amazing that something so simple can be so extraordinarily delicious. This soup is extremely smooth and has a luscious feel to it, and we can guarantee it will impress even the fussiest of tastes. One of the many things you can do with corn to bring out its sweet taste and delicate flavor is to turn it into the most amazing and creamy corn soup, which is exactly what we are going to do today. The combination of ingredients we are going to use yield a final soup that really has no equal when it comes to flavor and consistency. To begin with, place a pan over a medium heat and add in the garlic, the onion and the squash and saute the vegetables for roughly 5 minutes or until they slightly start catching to the pan. Here we are combining corn with one of its best companions, which is pumpkin. These two elements share many flavor compounds and together they are able to create a more complex dish. Once that's done, add in the corn kernels, the tofu and the stock. Stir well to combine and bring the liquid to the boil. For this recipe we are using our toasted corn stock, the recipe for which is linked in the cards. This unique and flavorsome stock is made using the parts of the cob that generally get wasted, and using it really elevates the flavor of the soup. However, feel free to use vegetable stock or water instead to obtain a quicker yet still delicious soup. Once the liquid reaches boiling point, simply cover the pan with the lid, turn the heat down to the minimum, and cook the ingredients for exactly 30 minutes. The liquid should simmer just lightly for the entire duration of the cooking time. Once that's done, the recipe is basically finished, and all you have to do is to thoroughly blend the ingredients to obtain the final soup. To do this, you can either use a high-speed blender or a regular stick blender. We are not using any salt in this recipe for a simple reason. Corn is a sweet-tasting ingredient, so trying to cover its sweet notes with salt will require you to add a lot of it. What we do recommend in this case is to add it on the surface of the soup before serving it, and you'll be amazed by how little of it you will need to get a savory dish. After the blending stage, the soup will be ready and delicious tasting, I promise. If you want to get even better results, strain it using a fine sieve to remove the large particles and obtain a crazy smooth cream of corn. To garnish the soup, corn kernels, roasted hazelnuts, dill and even popcorn work really well. Today's recipe is for one of our favorite warming dishes, something we like to call creamy celeriac soup. Soups can be achieved in thousands different ways and with almost any ingredient. However, when it comes to our soups, we want them to be easy to make and even easier to eat, with zero compromises. This particular soup is a great example of that philosophy. And if you want to know more about this marvelous dish, keep watching and we'll show you exactly how to make it. The beauty of recipes like this is that the most important thing is to get fresh, quality ingredients. If you manage to get fresh and quality ingredients, then it will be a success every single time. I personally vouch for that. To begin with, peel and dice the celeriac. There is no need to be a perfectionist here, as the ingredients will be blended at the end of the cooking process. Next up are the onions, which can be diced or sliced, your choice. Don't ever say we don't give you creative freedom. The final ingredient to prepare is the potatoes. Dice them so they are the same size as the celeriac, as that way the vegetables will cook in roughly the same time. Now add all the chopped ingredients into your favorite pot, followed by the stock, or water if you don't have any stock. Turn the heat on to high and bring the liquid to a boil. As soon as the liquid reaches the boiling point, cover the pot with a lid, lower the heat to the minimum, and simmer the ingredients for 30 minutes or until they are properly cooked. Once the time has elapsed, blend the ingredients together using a stick blender or any other blender you prefer. Now add in the mustard, which is a must in this recipe as it is a killer combination with celeriac, and blitz the ingredients once again to obtain a smooth and creamy soup. Now, how easy was that? And here you have the final soup. How does it look for you? Well, I'll tell you how it looks for me. Delicious. With a dish like this, I'm eagerly awaiting it cooling down so I can finally enjoy it to the fullest. Here you have our recipe for a vegetable stock. Stocks in general are very important in the kitchen as they can turn a dish from something verging on being worthy into something truly pleasurable to eat. We decided to add an unusual ingredient here as we wanted to add an umami note to the stock. We are confident that you will be surprised by the final result of this preparation. Now, stocks are not complicated. Well, these ones aren't. Admittedly, we don't have a clue about the stock market as that's nowhere near as tasty. Anyway, we must note a few simple rules to follow to obtain a great tasting stock. To begin with, slice all the vegetables as fine as possible. The only thing you shouldn't slice finely is the tomato, or it will disintegrate into the water, making a mess. Make sure to keep the pot for the stock nearby so that you can place in all the chopped vegetables. We decided to use red onions here, which will lend some of their color to the water, making the final stock darker. If you are aiming for a clear stock, use white onions instead. Why should you slice all the vegetables so finely if people always use chunkier vegetables to make stocks? The answer is pretty simple. Sliced vegetables give more flavor to the stock as there is a larger surface area in contact with the water, and they also cook faster. It is up to you to decide if you want to proceed this way, but we can guarantee that the difference between a stock made with finely sliced vegetable and one made with chunkier vegetables is colossal. Now that all the vegetables are ready, place the pot over a high heat, pour in the water and stir. To obtain a powerful stock, there should be enough water so that it only just covers the ingredients. Bring the water to the boil, lower the heat to the minimum and cover with the lid. Cook for exactly 30 minutes. To obtain a proper stock, make sure that the water simmers during the entire process as it shouldn't boil. Once the time has elapsed, leave the stock to cool completely before straining it, which will also allow for a stronger and more flavorsome taste. When the stock has completely cooled down, strain it into a large bowl by using a sieve lined with a wet muslin cloth. To extract as much flavor and juice as possible, gently wring the cloth. The vegetables can now be discarded as there is not much flavor left in them. And here you have the final stock. Isn't it screaming please drink me? Well, maybe not drink me, but it does scream please use me, and it would be rude not to. We use this stock instead of water to cook rice, couscous and other delicacies we regularly enjoy. For some reason, soups are never amongst the most popular of our recipes, and that's a real shame because I can assure you that if we are sharing a recipe for a soup, it means that it is good, possibly incredible. I mean, what have soups ever done to you? They are never offensive and never ever bite. Maybe you don't like liquidized food? I just can't get over it. I mean, come on, don't be so choosy and just watch this video. To begin with, let's do some heavy chopping. First, the celery, slice it lengthwise into strips and then dice it finely. Then the carrots, first into strips and then diced as finely as desired. Next ingredient to prepare are the onions. In this situation, it is down to personal preference to decide how to dice them, but I like the ingredients all of roughly the same size. The garlic, however, can be simply cut into thin slices. Cut the leeks in 2 parts lengthwise and then slice them finely. The last ingredient to prepare are the mushrooms, which I usually dice into bigger chunks. This is due to the fact that mushrooms release a lot of water during the cooking process, shrinking to roughly a third of their original size. You can use any mushrooms you desire, knowing that more exotic varieties usually yield a more complex and aromatic final soup. If you haven't cut off one of your fingertips with all of this chopping, we are now ready to proceed to the less dangerous part of the recipe. And if you have, then make sure to fish your finger out of the ingredients, as we generally find that fingers give the soup an undesired texture. Moving on, place a pot over a medium heat and throw in all the sliced vegetables apart from the mushrooms. Sweat the vegetables for 2 minutes and then add in a small amount of stock as well as the tomato paste. Stir well to properly dissolve the tomato paste. Add in the mushrooms and mix well to combine them with the rest of the ingredients. It is now time to add the rest of the stock, a pinch of salt, a pinch of pepper, and then stir well to combine once again. Now bring the liquid to a boil, lower the heat to the minimum and cover the pot with a lid. Cook the soup for exactly 30 minutes, making sure to keep it at simmering temperature at all time. Once the time has elapsed, remove the lid and add in the starch mixed with some water, which will thicken the soup just slightly. At this point, if you feel that for some reason the soup is too watery for your personal taste, you can either add more starch or simply cook it without the lid for a few minutes to evaporate some of the excess water, as simple as that. The dish is now ready, but before serving it, remember to taste it and adjust salt if desired. Another great addition to this soup is parsley, but if you want to add it, make sure to do so at the end and in a very small quantity, as it tends to cover the delicate woody flavor of the mushrooms. And here is the final soup, with its hearty and full-bodied flavor. Mushrooms are amongst the most savory of all ingredients, so if you have access to them and happen to fancy a soup, be prepared to taste something special. Today we are offering you our second Christmas-themed recipe, which will make the most amazing and creamy sweet potato soup. We believe that this soup would make the perfect starter for a Christmas meal, and the added hint of ginger really brings it to an exclusive level of festive exquisiteness. If you're a fan of healthy, luscious soups that taste great, then this is definitely the recipe for you, so it's time to get to it. To begin with, let's chop some vegetables. Start with the sweet potatoes, which should be cut into slices. Then move on to the carrots, which should also be cut into slices. Now that I'm thinking about it, all the vegetables should be cut into slices, so we are now trusting you to slice the rest of the vegetables. As ever, it's worth making sure you make them all roughly the same size to allow for even cooking. Tip all the vegetables into a pan, following no specific order, and then add the ginger. Turn on the heat on high and stir well to combine. Add some freshly ground black pepper and sauté the vegetables for roughly 5 minutes without adding any liquid. During this time, the vegetables will caramelize a bit, adding some interesting roasted notes to the final soup. Don't worry if the ingredients slightly catch to the pan, but also be careful not to let them burn. Now, add the stock and the vinegar, then mix well once again to combine. The final ingredient to add is the tofu. And that's the hard work finished, and all that remains to be done is to bring the liquid to a boil, cover the pan with the lid, lower the heat to the minimum, and cook the ingredients for exactly 30 minutes. The liquid should simmer for the duration of the cooking time. Once the time has elapsed, turn off the heat and remember to remove the ginger before moving on, as blending it into the soup will compromise the final flavor. Once the ingredients are cool, simply blend them into the most amazingly smooth sweet potato soup. If you believe that the resulting soup is a bit too thick for your personal taste, simply add a touch of stock and blend again to turn it into your own perfect masterpiece. Once blended, remember to add salt if desired, so that the soup better matches with your own personal taste. If you want to add a little bit of heat in this dish, why not using a hint of cayenne pepper to make things even more interesting and fiery? You can do so after the soup has been blended by adding the spice a little at a time. And here you have the final Christmassy sweet potato soup. Whilst cooking this beauty, the most amazing aroma spreads all over your house, which is one of the things I like the most about cooking. I mean, who doesn't like having the smell of delicious food all over the place during Christmas? Not that I mind it on any other day of the year either. If there is something we don't like, it has to be wasting quality ingredients. There are parts of the corn fruit that are generally thrown away, as it is believed that they can't create flavor, but we beg to differ, and we are about to turn the least important parts of the corn ear into the most amazing roasted corn stock. To begin with, preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius, which is about 360 degrees Fahrenheit. Now simply remove the leaves from the cobs using whichever method you prefer. The parts of the corn ear we are going to use for the stock are the leaves and the center of the cob itself, which are tastier than most people would believe. Now place all the leaves onto an oven tray, making sure to not overcrowd it, as you want the leaves to get an equal amount of heat during the cooking process. Once that's done, cover the leaves with a cooling rack or lay a few pieces of cutlery onto the leaves. Spoons or knives work perfectly to keep them flat. Now simply pop the tray into the oven and roast the leaves for roughly 10 to 15 minutes. At the end of the roasting process, you will end up with a tray full of beautifully browned and very aromatic corn leaves, ready to release all of their flavor into the water. Now let's move on to the corn ear. First, cut off the shank and the tip from the cob, to make the next step easier and safer. Now, line a deep container with a kitchen towel and use a knife to cut the kernels from the cob. Using this method, the corn kernels won't end up all over your kitchen, and you won't have any cleaning to do at the end, which is always a bonus. The corn kernels are not needed for this recipe, and you can use them for any corn-based dish you desire, or to make a deliciously creamy corn soup that we will be sharing next. Now, to the cobs. For the sake of feeling like a bodybuilder, break the center of the cob into two parts. We feel we should mention that this process has absolutely no effect on the final result of the recipe. Place a pot large enough to accommodate all the ingredients onto a medium heat, tip in the cobs, the roasted leaves, the water, and stir the ingredients. The roasted leaves will soon rehydrate and become soft. Bring the liquid to the boil, cover the pan with the lid, turn the heat to the minimum, and cook the ingredients for 30 minutes. Once the cooking time has elapsed, turn off the heat and let the stock cool down completely before moving on. Once the stock is cool, simply strain it using a fine mesh sieve to complete the recipe. After this step, you will end up with a super aromatic stock that will lend roasted corn notes to any dish you desire. I like to use this flavorsome liquid to cook grains, to make broths, and also in conjunction with the corn kernels to obtain the most amazing corn soups. Hello guys, and welcome to the Vegan Corner. Spanish cuisine is renowned for its luscious recipes. Unfortunately, a lot of Spain's delicacies are neither vegan nor raw. Today's preparation is inspired by one of the most delicious and famous Spanish recipe, gazpacho. We will tweak the traditional ingredients only slightly, bringing you a stunning and delightful raw summer treat. To begin with, place the chopped tomatoes in a food processor and blitz them. Once finished, strain the obtained liquid to separate from the solid parts. We like to strain liquids with a super bag, but you can achieve the same results by using a wet muslin cloth or simply a fine mesh sieve. This step is needed so we get some extra tomato juice to add to the final soup. Now let's move on and cut the other ingredients, starting from the tomatoes, which should be cut into chunks. There is really no need for a complicated explanation here, as all the ingredients will be blended later on anyway. However, make sure not to make them too big or they won't marinate properly during the next steps. Also, we recommend keeping an empty bowl on standby, which you will use to place all the chopped ingredients. Now cut the onions in half and reserve one of the halves, as we don't need the whole onion for this recipe unless you are using a rather small onion. Once you've done that, cut the other half of the onion into small pieces. Once finished, remove the core from the pepper and discard it. Cut the pepper into strips and then dice it. Next on our list is cucumber. We need only a small piece of this vegetable, as it has a powerful flavor which tends to overwhelm the rest of the ingredients. Peel the cucumber and dice it. The skin could also be kept on, but we like to remove it as we feel it adds too much extra crunch to the final soup. Many people also find cucumber difficult to digest, but that's generally not an issue when combined properly with other foods. Peel the garlic and finely chop it. Take a few basil leaves, pile them on top of each other and slice them finely. Now let's take the bowl with all the chopped ingredients and add some seasoning. First, the black pepper, which is definitely desirable in this sort of dishes. Then add a generous pinch of salt, followed by a splash of Tabasco. Remember that Tabasco is not raw, so you might want to avoid it if you are trying to make your gazpacho fully raw. The last ingredient to add is the previously prepared tomato juice. Once that's done, stir the ingredients well to combine them. All the condiments and seasoning used in this recipe are completely discretionary and not strictly needed to create the soup. However, we really enjoy the taste of some special ingredient every once in a while. For example, we feel that balancing spiciness by adding some drops of Tabasco is easier than adding chili. Once finished mixing, cover the bowl with some cling film and place in the fridge to marinate for an hour before moving on. Once the time has elapsed, the mixture should smell heavenly, which is always a good sign. Place all the marinated ingredients into the blender and blend at high speed until you have a smooth soup. After this step, it is down to your discretion as whether or not this dish is completed. Personally, we love a bit of texture in our soups, but we know that not everyone does. If you are not a fan of added texture, simply strain the crunchy bits away. Regardless, this is how the final dish should look like, and don't even dare to say that it doesn't look mouth-watering and utterly delicious. This preparation has no fat whatsoever, and being vegan, it is also completely dairy-free. Will we manage to make a vegan bechamel sauce without using the traditional ingredients? Let's find out together with our video recipe. To begin with, place the tofu into a food processor or a blender large enough to accommodate all the ingredients. We found soft tofu or Japanese silken tofu gave a better result. The next ingredient to use is ground nutmeg. Quantity can be adjusted according to personal taste, so feel free to experiment here. Now add a generous pinch of salt, if desired, and some ground black pepper to the other ingredients. That's it! The ingredients are all in and ready to be turned into bechamel. Blitz the ingredients until they become a smooth and lump-free sauce. If your food processor doesn't catch all the tofu at once, make sure to stop working the ingredients and scrape down the side